Hello, farm folks. Willie Vogt here. Ever dreamed of seeing the absolute cutting edge of agriculture, the kind of tech that makes you say, wow, the future is now? I'm talking about Agritechnica in Hanover, Germany, the world's biggest, most amazing farm show. For years, you've told me you wished you could go, and guess what? Now you can. I'm leading an exclusive tour to Agritechnica in November 2025, and I'd love for you to join me. We're talking 3 full days immersed in the latest machinery, the smartest innovations, and global farming practices you won't see anywhere else. Imagine getting a sneak peek at the technology that'll be shaping your farm in the years to come. Plus, we'll celebrate International Farmers Day right at the show. We're going to visit working German farms and even check out the incredible Volkswagen facility, and we'll finish up with a trip to Berlin seeing some historic sites. Spaces are filling up fast, so don't wait. Visit agtoursusa.com/agritechnica. That's agtoursusa.com/agritechnica. See you there.
Well, hey, welcome. I am joined today. I'm very excited. I'm joined by Chrissy Wozniak, who runs or has run North American Ag for the last 7 or 8 years. And I'm excited to have her on. We did a podcast years ago. Today, we are going to be talking about AI and robotics and all those kind of technical aspects. But she runs a great business, and her and I met through virtual connections, and then we saw each other at some trade shows. And she just has a couple of podcasts. One's called North American Ag Spotlight, and then the other one is What Color is Your Parachute? If you haven't listened to them yet, you should go find them after you listen to this one, and go find them on Spotify or wherever. And her website would be great. We'll have links to all those in the show notes. She speaks on a great set of subjects. She's been involved in sales and marketing, currently involved in American Agri-Women and Ecorobotix, which is what we're going to have her talk about. But enough about me saying things. Let's let Chrissy introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her journey in the ag world and how that's been going. And I see you posting on LinkedIn. You're at a lot of trade shows, all the big trade shows. So we're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on in your agribusiness world.
Yeah, so I guess I started out wanting to be a farmer when I was a kid. For some reason, we lived in town. I don't know why I wanted to be a farmer. So I went to school for agriculture and had no farming background other than horses. And I know that doesn't count to most of the agriculture community, but I did hay when I was a kid. So that's where I started. I ended up not becoming a farmer because you had to marry a farmer, and that just didn't pan out like that. So I worked in agribusiness my whole career. And now, like you said, I wear a bunch of different hats. I do have the 2 podcasts. One is biweekly, North American Ag Spotlight, and then the other one is more relaxed when I have a good story. What Color is Your Tractor? And it is stories of the ag brands you love and the ag brands you love to hate. So that's all part of North American Ag, which is kind of like the my hobby part of my life. Also involved with American Agri-Women. I'm the VP of Communications currently until my elected position is up until November. And it's an excellent organization. When I actually immigrated from Canada back in 2021, and when I came to the US, I decided that I'm tired of complaining about how things should be different in agriculture. And I found with the help of Warren Clark, actually a lot of people know Warren Clark, and he guided me to American Agri-Women, where we are the force for truth in agriculture. So we do a lot of advocating for agriculture at the local, state, and national levels. And so I am highly involved in that. And that takes me on a lot of travels. There's three meetings a year that you get to go to, and I would encourage any women involved in agriculture. It's a great place to become a member, for sure.
That's right.
And then,
that's great.
Yeah, and
one of the things I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
back on that subject. I wanted to ask you, one of your taglines, and I don't know if I want to call it a tagline, it was kind of in your beliefs, is changing the way ag communicates and markets to consumers. And I think that's something important for people to know, that you're a fairly big advocate of. You've had guests that focus on that subject of getting the word out. And I think that's part of your campaign, of your media campaign too, is marketing and communicating, not just on traditional media, but maybe non-mainstream is maybe what the term can be considered. So I think that's important as well for people to understand that there's been a great deal of effort for you around that subject of communicating the ag story and getting it out there and making sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my main passions is, the 2% that grow our food are underrepresented. And when they are represented, it's often in this, you know, over idealistic farm world way, and it
Sure.
misses out on the precision and the technology and the things that really drive it's I often say it's, there's three things that every producer has to deal with every single day, and that's technology, policy, and faith, right? With
Hey,
those three things drive farming.
sure.
And so, yeah, and that's kind of where my heart lies, is that how can we create a message that gives them those three touch points, and not only brands agriculture to the end user, but then also brands companies, so that they can relate better to the producer. There's a lot of
Sure.
people that enter agriculture without any background, so it's important to me that every company has a good understanding of who farmers are, what they need, and what drives them. So I
Absolutely.
guess, and that's on all of those three things, right? With technology,
Right.
policy, and faith.
Sure. And you're also talking to somebody who didn't grow up on a farm and spent my whole life in agriculture. Is
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, as far as remote as you could get from farming, but decided I wanted to do that as well. And but I've got family members who still say stuff, and I'm like, nah, it's not really like that, most of it's because they hear popular press say something, and I think the importance of it is the difficulty it is to produce the crops that have to be to feed us. And I think that's the importance of that, is people that make the decisions, pass the laws, sometimes don't know, hey, that sounds great in theory, but when you actually implement it, your eggs might be $8 a dozen, or maybe $12 a dozen. I think they're $8 now, but
Yeah.
and that's what I always tell people, is like, yeah, that's good. I understand what you're saying, and uh, but that's not how it really works when you get behind agribusiness and how it actually happens. And I think that's a great. I never get into that subject, but I appreciate the people like yourself that do, because it's definitely needed. So, well, kind of jump over, and then in your journey, somewhere in your journey, you jumped on board with a company called Ecorobotix, and that's we're excited to talk to you about today. But tell us a little bit about. Um, well, let me ask you this before we get into Ecorobotix, because it's pretty self-explanatory what the company does. It's robotics and it's eco, so it's related to ag. But give us, if you could, this is one of those areas like regenerative ag or AI. And I hear every day, in not just agribusiness or ag, but in other businesses on LinkedIn, you hear this company's doing great things with AI. Become a professional speaker using AI. Could you give, in the ag world, just in your viewpoint, because you go to a lot of trade shows, you've been to a lot of specifically around technology trade shows. Could you give our listeners maybe a big picture view, 10,000-foot view of robotics and AI and regenerative and I don't know what other words we want to throw in there, but kind of it's hard for people to say, okay, here's what we need to do. It seems like there's platforms everywhere, there's programs everywhere. Um, I've even heard the word digitize, which I get the idea, but what does the term mean? And everybody's got digital platforms that they're putting in for grain operations or feeding operations or crop inputs. And so if you have an opinion on that, to give a big picture view, and then we'll get into kind of how Ecorobotix fits into that.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, technology is one of those pillars that every producer needs so that they can find more profit by streamlining their processes and making their operations more efficient. And I love ag tech. And we live in such an incredible time in history where it's moving so fast. And something I actually noticed throughout last year, I've been following this and I've had a lot of these companies on my podcasts and told their stories. And something, 10 years ago, it was you'd go to a show and you'd go, wow, look at that technology. That's so cool. And it was just over and over. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, look what that can do. Look at what this machine can do.
Sure.
But there was always a sense of, yeah, but does it really benefit the farm, the bottom line? There was a lot of really cool, wild, neat stuff that you could never imagine. But I would say in the last 18 months, I feel like the entire space has matured. And as it's reaching this maturity level where it's like, okay, well, I can show you on paper where this will take your bottom line and reduce those expenses, reduce those inputs, and it's
Sure.
real now. And I really feel like something's really clicked in the last 18 months where now these companies are not just brand new, they're not just shiny, cool
Yeah.
things. They are really affecting how farms are run and how they're run more efficiently
Sure.
and really the bottom line, a lot of it is inputs and labor, right? So how can you
Yeah.
get more labor and how can you reduce your inputs? So it's been really exciting to watch.
Do you feel like it's becoming more? I mean, we've all seen that thing where, this is the house of the future. And you look at it and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, we could do something like that, but the average middle class homeowner couldn't do that. Or in this case, it's the 500-acre grower couldn't have that kind of technology. Is it that in the last 2 years or 18 months, it started to become applicable to the everyday farmer, if there is such a thing? Is that kind of
Yeah.
like you're saying, hey, we used to say, wow, that's great. Someday they'll have that at my level, but now it is at the level where it's affordable and achievable at a middle class, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it used to be that it was, you've got to have a few thousand acres that you're farming before you could ever see a return on these investments.
Sure.
But now, because there's so much effort being put into this technology and because it's moving so fast, like even just AI in the last year, just regular ChatGPT has come so far in just a year. All of this technology is growing leaps and bounds so quickly that it really is there is a solution for a small farmer just as there is for the Taylor Farms and Dudas of the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
These big huge growers that we can
Right.
there is a solution that is more efficient and more precise for everyone now, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's when it takes off. We saw it. I
Mhm.
mean, you can look back over the course of your life and say, I remember when this came out, and there'll be four different versions of it, and you buy it. I think and that as a point, I bought a cassette player because it was a step up from an 8-track player. I bought a Walkman because it played CDs, and then I was old school, and so I had to buy an iPod, whatever the different sizes were. And now we went to buy an iPod not long ago because we still run with them, me and my wife, and the kids like, well, you want you just listen to it on your phone. Nobody buys an iPod anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I don't have a subscription for that. I guess it's one more. And I think sometimes people get worried, and maybe that's something we can address during our discussion with like robotics is, am I buying, the version that's going to be outdated, and how fast is it going to be outdated? Computers that happen frequently. You can't buy a computer for more than a few years now. I mean, you can, but it starts to get pretty slow and old if you don't buy one every 2 or 3 years. How do you kind of look at that aspect of the different components of what you've seen in the technology world?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would I would say if we think about just our computers, we used to have discs and CDs where we had to load all the programs on. And then when that one was obsolete, we'd have to go buy another, the next version, the next version, the next version. Well,
Right.
now even on our computers, we have web-based software and it is always updating and you pay a subscription. So that's also happening on equipment.
Yeah.
So if you just buy equipment with this technology the way it is today, tomorrow it's going to be out of date. So you definitely need to have machinery that is able to update, and you're not just buying because everything's just changing like so quickly. So,
And I
and
think
I
that's
think most of
yeah.
the equipment is doing that now.
I think that's a good point. It's a question to ask at the point of purchase to say today. I mean, like I get a tax software every year, and I buy it. It doesn't even. It's just a code number that every week when I start the program up when I'm doing my taxes, as the months begin to come closer, it updates every week because there's new changes coming out. And I think that's something that people need with technology need to ask what's going to be the process of servicing it and updating it as things. If it's a huge investment, I mean, I know what people invested with ERP programs, software programs for their company software, and it's a huge. You may do one or two of those in the course of your career with a company because it's so expensive, but those require absolutely are going to require updates and integrating with other systems. That's I think the other thing is all of a sudden Venmo and that popped out. You couldn't have thought of those before they were invented to have your ERP system accept payment from PayPal or Venmo
Right,
or
exactly.
so absolutely. Well, how does tell us a little bit about Ecorobotix and how that fits into the whole picture and what's involved with that and all that you get involved with.
Yeah, for sure. So I was at a show, an excellent show, highly recommend it, out in Sacramento, outside of Sacramento, California. This will be the fourth year of the show. It's called FIRA USA, and it's a
Okay.
European show that brings together the best and the brightest companies that are involved in ag tech. So you're going to see like the very the very first prototypes, and then you're going to see like the John Deere See and Spray. So you're going to see all of that, all of this, all condensed into, I think it's 3 or 4 days in September this year. So I was there last year, and I've known about this company Ecorobotix for a few years. I've had them on the podcast a few times. Just a really cool company, and they're actually based in Switzerland, and that's where the company originated. They started back in 2011, so they've been working on this for a long time. And I was at this show, and the marketing manager, she approached me at that show and said, we're looking for U.S. Marketing and communications manager. Would you be interested? And I was like, that sounds so fun.
That's great. That's great.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll tell you, I've always worked with companies, whether consulting or being employed by companies in agriculture. You know, a lot of these companies have been around forever, and so it's always tight. There's not a ton of freedom. It's all always the same, and
Sure.
which is also fun. But the thought of working for a startup that is involved in such cool things just lit me on fire. I was just so
Yeah.
excited. And yeah, so I the next week, I think it was, yeah, it was the next week, I flew out to Pasco, Washington, where the head office is for the US. Spent a week there just kind of getting to know the product and know the people. And by the end of the week, I had accepted the position. And so I have
You've been on the road ever
myself a
since. You've been
yes,
the world
exactly.
there. You were at
Yes, a lot of travel.
the World Ag Show. I think that's what it's called out in Tulare. And I saw
Yep.
you at several of the other ones here. I just was looking at
Yeah,
your
New
travel
York Farm
schedule.
Show.
New
Oh
York,
yeah,
yeah,
New York Farm Show, Michigan, FIRA, and then all the American Agri-Women events too. And yeah,
sure.
it's
I
been a
saw
lot. I go
you're
out to
complaining
Pasco
about
again next
snow
week.
in New York after you came from
Oh
Ontario. I was like, I think you forgot. Now that you're in Florida, you forget the cold really quick. So
oh yeah, you
um,
definitely do. But I get my 1 week at New York Farm Show, and I
that's a
get
good
my
one.
fill of
Yeah,
snow every year.
that's great. And you were over there. Well, Ecorobotix, Pasco, Washington, makes me think of specialty crop, produce, vineyards, um, vegetables. Tell us a little bit about the business of what they do and what they provide. What all that they have.
Yeah. So Ecorobotix, the flagship product is the Ara Ultra High Precision Sprayer. And it's a tractor pull behind sprayer that is for high value specialty crops. So onions, cabbage, lettuce, yeah, pretty much, you know, the menu is growing all of the time. So each crop kind of has its own algorithm. And I guess I'll explain how the machine works. As it's being
Sure.
pulled across the beds, it has three cameras. Well, three camera areas, and it's taking about 60 pictures a second on each camera. And there is sends it all to like the brain, and which is AI, and it is identifying whether it's looking at each plant and whether it's a crop or if it's a weed. So say we're spraying herbicide and it's going across and it's identifying the crop, and it will there are 156 nozzles across, spray nozzles, and it will just spray the weed. So you can reduce herbicide by up to 95% because you're not broadcasting it anymore.
Sure.
You're just targeting it to 2.4 by 2.4 inch square size.
Okay.
So you're just targeting those weeds. And then if you're
2.4 feet, 2.4, is that what feet, yards?
inch.
Okay.
That's
So,
yep.
okay.
Yep. So very
Gotcha.
targeted. Yep.
Spot. I gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
And so it's going across there, a pull behind, not on its own. It's robotically looking for the weeds, spraying the weeds. You have a driver pulling the vehicle or the pull
Yes.
behind.
Yeah. So it's not autonomous. I know a lot of them are. And actually the very first product that Ecorobotix made was autonomous. And then they decided, you know what, we're going to focus on spraying. We're going to let the tractor do what the tractor does.
Okay.
And then really just focus on this precision spraying. And
Sure.
and then it also, like if you're using foliar fertilizer, it'll identify just the plant and just spray the plant, not the weeds, because you don't want to feed the weeds.
Sure.
And it like I said, the precision is just phenomenal. Watching this machine go, and you see each of those nozzles spraying as it's taking those pictures, processing, spraying in a quarter of a second.
And is the data going up to a Ecorobotix? The pictures, are they going to a brain unit inside of the cloud, let's just call it, or is it managed right on the piece of equipment? And then, so the AI for your field, is it the AI of John Smith's onion field acre, the home farm? Is that, how does that look?
So it's kind of both. There is the sprayer does have its own Wi-Fi, and so it's making those decisions in real time on the machine. And then it's also sending it up because the machine has to learn. All AI has to learn.
Right.
So that's why there's crop specific algorithms. And there's kind of three stages of algorithm. There's an alpha algorithm when it's like right now we're working on lettuce thinning. So, keep one lettuce and then spray two, right? And then keep one and spray two all the way down the field. So that's in the alpha stage. And then so at the alpha stage, the producer can use it. And what that's doing is gathering all of those pictures, and those pictures go back to Switzerland, the computer is taught more precisely what the lettuce looks like, what that pattern is. So it's learning and learning.
Sure.
And then when it moves from an alpha to a beta, now any producer can try it in the beta stage. And then at that point it's learned enough, but now it's still gathering all of those pictures and learning and learning. And then it moves to a paid algorithm. So then you can purchase the algorithm, and then, as we talked about before, it's subscription based. So if you want carrots and you want lettuce, you would pay for those algorithms. But if you want lettuce thinning, you would pay for that one. Once it becomes paid.
That's amazing. And that's a good point that you pointed out with AI. I first got into this, I'll be guilty. I looked at Google and I looked at AI and I'm like, what's the difference? or Chat GPT, I shouldn't say AI, but I was looking at Chat GPT. Well, the difference is that it it will manipulate the information that you give it if you ask it to. It does learn you, like me specifically. I don't use it tremendously to write content, but I use it to tweak a title or give me a better way of saying this particular sentence. Because a lot of times my editing software doesn't like the phrase of the wording I use because I use words that aren't English syntax, good English, and it'll flag them, and then I pull it out and I put an AI and it rewords them sometimes. But the difference between just internet and AI is the AI learns
Yes.
as it gets smarter and smarter, learns from the broadcast world and then applies it. It's like a human brain thinking, reasoning, not quite as much as a human, but it's reasoning about what's happening, what they should do. And
Oh,
I think
yes.
I watched somebody take an Excel spreadsheet of their data, a salesperson who didn't have sales data, didn't have a CRM program. He took Chat GPT and used imported Excel spreadsheets and turned it into a basic CRM program, which was pretty darn good for what people need to have out here as a salesperson, because there's a lot of them that don't have any data
Yeah.
manipulation tool, and the Chat GPT just manipulated it perfectly. As you mentioned, that happened within the last year. I think I just signed up for the paid version, but there's one level higher, I believe. It's 3.4 or 4.0. It's amazing. I watched somebody use it and I'm like, I don't use it that often that I need to bump up to that level, but it's going to continue. And these are just the very first year. We'll laugh someday about GPT 3.4 and 4.0, just like we do, 384s and 484s and 286 computers. Now we're way beyond those, but that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you bring up some really good points there too. With learning, I know there's often some hesitancy to use it as a tool, and I I would say, especially in agriculture, especially in our political environment, being farmers and um, you know, always fighting against we're killing the earth, that kind
Yeah,
of
right.
narrative. If we're not contributing and helping it learn, who's going to?
That's right.
So,
Yeah,
yes, so we need to use it, and there are so many ways to use it. I think a lot of people think, "Oh, it's just plagiarism or it's gonna do my work for me." But you can make your daily life more efficient by using AI in that what I often do, because I use so many different in marketing, we use a lot of different types of software
sure.
and a lot of integrations. So a lot of time I'll have an idea and then I'll just ask it, did is here's what I'm thinking about doing. Is this the most efficient way to do it? Well,
Yeah,
now I my learning curve has now gotten a lot shorter because it
sure.
can tell me what it thinks about that. So there's a lot of ways that you can use it where you're not creating content. I know for marketers, we think about creating content, which it's awesome for. But also you can't just use it straight out of the box because it is going to
Absolutely.
use the word
Right.
sustainable too much. It's going to use a lot of those like over marketed terms
Yes.
way too
Yes.
much. So we can't
Absolutely.
just use it out of the box like that. We need to train it that
Right.
sustainable is an over marketed term. What does that really mean? So it is important that we are giving that content so that it's learning from us too.
Right. And I think you're exactly right. It'll get spit out to you and you're like, and I think the same thing would happen with data that comes from the field. You get the data, it's doing a lot more than it used to be. When drones first were starting out here 10 years ago, I started working with some startups that were trying to market their product, and here's our strategy. And I was like, well, who is going to look at those pictures? You're going to fly this drone over 1,000 acre, and you're going to be at 100 foot off the ground or whatever it is, and they're going to take the cameras were always great. And I said, somebody has to take those pictures and look at them. Now, if you're doing that and you're still going to have scouts, well, now they're to the point where, as you mentioned, it's identifying it while it's looking. Question for you, big on weeds. I never hear too much about insecticides. Does it work? Bugs and the like?
Yep.
Is robotics picked up now? Hey, I see this problem in the field in this part of the world, and it's got this many kind of bugs going involved, and picks up on that, or how does that look?
Yes, there are some. So the Ecorobotix is more about the plant. It's identifying the plant, not a particular insect at this time. You would pretty much see the insect, and then you would choose whatever chemical that you were going to use, and then it would just put it, where you need it. Whether you just need it, sometimes you just want it on the soil and not the plant. So
Right.
it would only spray the soil, but not
Okay.
the plant.
I got you.
Sometimes you only want the plant sprayed. Sometimes you want the weed and the plant sprayed if it's something that is, you don't want it eating the weeds either. So,
Sure.
yeah, so you can use it, but there
Okay.
are other companies that are, especially in the greenhouse industry as well, things that are um, not drones, but I've seen ones that go on cables across the tables and benches and identify different things that it
Ah,
sees and sends it back to a
okay.
computer, and those are really cool. The greenhouse industry is
Sure. When you're
just
talking about
incredible.
high cost
Oh
items
yes.
that they need to put a stop to stuff quickly. What do you see as the biggest challenge to going from beta to mainstream products that are out there? What has been your biggest challenges in that field?
Do you mean in developing market share and acceptance in the
Yeah,
community or
yeah,
more?
adoption rates, getting out and
Yeah.
actually selling the product. When you meet, I mean, well, we can talk about that. Your go-to-market strategy is you work with dealers you were mentioning before, but
Mhm.
you actually got to talk to the producers that are going to buy the product from your dealer, your equipment dealer. So adoption rate has to be a big challenge. But what do you see as being the difficulty of producers to jump on board or to take on the products that you're technology that you're working with?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the apprehension would be data overload. Number one is
Okay.
I'm going to get all of this data, but what do I do with it? And that's across the board. All machinery in this space has the same kind of issue. And
Sure.
then the other one is also, what if it doesn't work on my farm? And
Mhm.
or what's real and not real. And I think for me as a marketer, that's exciting because I like to be able to quell those fears, right? And try to say,
Sure.
okay, here are some real reasons um, and real cases why this is true, what it does. And then also, you know, you can also point to, another solution for a farmer if your solution isn't the one for them, right? So
Right.
so
Right.
I think trust number one, that the company has to overcome that trust so that the producer does, you know,
Believe it. Yeah.
understand, believe you what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And the way that at Eco Robotics that we kind of smash that head on is that we have a really good demo strategy. So we pretty much learned quickly before I even started that if a producer sees this machine in the field working, they're they're likely going to buy one because
Yeah.
it is amazing how much, and you would think that chemicals would be the greatest savings. It's actually labor. In high
Yeah.
value specialty crops. It's a lot of H2A work. So this is actually replacing labor, and then also for reasons for being a good steward of the earth. It has skirts on it, so it's reducing the drift as well. So there are a lot of
Right.
reasons when you see this machine going across the ground
Sure.
and you're seeing how small the chemical tank is. A lot of producers are like, "Oh, I'm going to need a bigger tank than that." And
Right.
they're like, "No,
Right.
you're not, because you're only
Wow.
spraying the tiny little piece, right?" So I think
Yeah.
once my marketing strategy is how do we get people to sign up for a demo, and then how do we get that tractor and that team out there to their farm or to a local farm or to an extension. And then
That's
that way people can see it.
yeah, and you bring up a really a good word, and it jumps out at me because I speak on it, and that's trust. I wrote some recently about biologicals. There's obviously a slew of biologicals. That's probably a bad word to call. You call it hundreds of biologicals on the market.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. And one of the questions I always ask salespeople and teams, company, whoever wants to listen, is where is the center of excellence for the products that you're marketing? In other words, and I use the examples of dairy nutrition. There's 3 universities that most people kind of see them as the center of excellence. In other words, if you say, hey, feed more bypass fat, they're going to say, well, let me go check with what, UW Wisconsin, or Cornell or Cal Davis, what do those folks say about it? Or they're going to go to somebody. And I always try to ask, where would a producer, if I said, my robotics is the best and is worth the ROI, is there hey, this country or this region of the world or this industry is kind of the benchmark of truth, if that makes any sense, the trust, or is there nobody really kind of grabbing that title?
You mean in the ag tech world, you think?
In ag tech, yeah, for
Yeah.
ag tech specifically, is there somebody
Yeah.
that's saying, hey, here's kind of the world of robotics and uh, we like to use universities, even though universities a lot of times, because of their trailing the market, they're sometimes, I don't want to say behind the latest technology, because industry getting paid from customers is where a lot of technology actually comes from. But the universities are kind of the ones who say, yeah, this is the professors, because a lot of customers, a lot of farmers think, well, they don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. They're just going to tell the truth. So if they say it's good to feed bypass fat, then I'll buy it and feed it, because they wouldn't just promote a product. Is there anybody taking over that role in the
Yeah, I would
robotics
say
world?
that it's still there's a few areas actually. The university extensions are great. We work with them a lot, not only because they're doing research, but then they are also presenting their research to the producers in that local area. So what we found is that that is a great place to support those extensions and then
Yeah,
have them see and test and,
right,
tweak the product. And then when they are like, yeah, this is solid, they will
right.
also, share it with
Sure.
their communities. And I found too, like we didn't really have this too much in Canada. Having We don't have this extension thing. And since I've moved to the US and I've seen, just our local extension here, uh, they do they do hold trust. And
Yeah,
I think it is because they are not representing a product. So
right.
I do really like that.
Sure.
And then also I would have to say Western Growers does a great job. Western Growers puts out a lot of um, content and support
Okay.
for ag tech, and some other people that's just they live and breathe ag tech. So I
Yeah.
really like the content that comes from them, and they're fair and balanced. But yeah, and I think a lot of the media, because it's interesting, a lot of the media is attracted to what these ag tech companies are doing. And I can say that just with my own podcast. I'm always just interested. I want to know what's going on. So
Right.
so it is very
Yeah.
interesting. And I think with the media, people can learn, especially
Sure.
if it's interview style, even what we're doing right now, just talk freely and openly about the products. And that's a good way to get a more balanced view before you go and look at the product yourself. So I think
Absolutely.
that, and then there's some shows that are really, really focused on ag technology. And I
Sure.
think you just being able to go to one of these shows and look around and be able to kick tires and watch demos, I think that's
Right.
really important too.
Yeah. The one thing that happens when you do go to these shows, and it happened to me, and St. Louis had it was more of ag software than it was tech. It was ag software show, and I think it's changed names and it's moved around a little bit. But when I went there, I looked across the show, and all I could think of was the different platforms. I was like, and they were all predominantly for producers. There was a few that were for agribusiness, but most of them were for producers. And I thought to myself, if I was a producer, I would look at, well, there's a platform that does my crops, or there's a platform that does my accounting for my crops. But then I've got animals and I've got different operations. And do they all? And then equipment, of course, has become platforms. So John Deere has their own,
Mhm.
and Case and everybody. Um, do you find people wanting to know, or is any person on the farm trying to word this question the right way. Is anybody taking up the reins of saying, okay, this plugs into this and this plugs into that? It'll work with other systems. Is that a factor? Meaning a lot of technology seems like it's standalone. And so the struggle that people will have when the salesperson goes out to try to sell it is like, okay, now I've got all half my stuff over here, and CRM programs run into this. We got all my CRM data for the sales data. It's over here. It's not connected to my ERP. And
Right.
so if I want my ERP to talk to my sales CRM program, I've got to pay to interface those. Or they're kind of like, I got to learn that and I got to learn this. And how do you, has that happened with what you've seen in your talking to different companies and what you see out in the California show and maybe even with Ecorobotix, if you can speak to that as well?
Yeah, for sure. So there is a organization called AEM, Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and
Right.
they really deal with this head on. And they hold working sessions, isobus sessions. I can't remember what
Yes.
each of the isobus means, but they get
Yeah.
together, the heads of these companies, with all of their crazy computer parts, and they sit in a room and try to make standards. And I really like that. I've covered that a few times, and I just think that that is necessary going forward,
Right.
is for these equipment manufacturers to work together and say, okay, how can we complement each other, especially
Right.
with tractors, right? Tractors are where a lot of this kind of the hub of everything
Yes. Right.
um, is, and everything needs to feed into it. I would say that even if it's not in one system, just like with your CRM, just like with your ERP system, um, that even now there are ways to bring in that information together and marry it. And it's not so bad if you're sitting in the machine looking at one tablet over here that's giving you this information and one over
Sure.
here that's giving you this information. I don't see too many um, people complaining about that. I think we're going to get to a place where everything is in one screen. But as you know
Sure.
from sales and marketing, it is
Yeah.
not. In marketing, there is no one system that's going to do all of it. I get people saying to me, well, just use the ERP. No, I'm
Yeah.
not using the
Well,
ERP.
same with CRM. They'll be like, we've got a accounting software. I'm like, that's not designed for
Yeah.
your sales intelligence market reports. If you're really good at manipulating them, maybe. And I think as with any ebb and flow of change and technology, like TV right now, it was very simple. You had three channels, but you didn't have a lot of choices 30, whatever, 40 years ago. Then we got cable. It was still easy because you bought one company's cable. Well, now, if you want to watch American football, I don't know about Canadian football, but if you want to watch American football, you've got to have about four subscriptions and you got to be really talented. I always tell people if you can find football on any given Sunday, you know how to run most software in any business you're in. So if you're afraid of your CRM program, just try to figure out which channel is playing that week and which ones has it. And there's every other Thursdays on ESPN, and then one time it's on this channel, and it really has become spread out. And then it always kind of spreads out, gets too complicated, and then people are like, hey, you know what? Maybe if we just put all this together and bundle it, people would pay for that bundling of somehow to make it simpler. And I think that's what I typically see with some technology advances. It's like all the little pieces are separate. They kind of kept together, and then a lot of them don't make profit, so they all get bought out by somebody, merged into one kind of manageable system. And I think that's what I look for in when somebody's trying to sell something, and especially with apps. Somebody will say, "I got this great app. I want you to help me go out and sell this to farmers." Like, what should I do for farmers? Is the first thing a person with an app is going to look at and say is, how is that going to fit in with what I'm currently doing? Because they're solving the problem somehow right now. And so what's going to happen with that? And you've got a great story because yours reduces, well, let's talk about it. It reduces input costs, reduces labor.
Mhm.
I know on the website it had reducing, replace, and regenerate. I think was the reduce, replace, and regenerate. Any of the other R's that you want to maybe talk about what it does and how that works?
Yeah, yeah, and it's all really. I always say, well, because working in marketing, you get irritated by marketing, overused marketing things. I already touched on that,
Sure.
but really, when it comes down to it, every producer wants to be a good steward of what the land that they own, right? And I think there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on. And especially now, marketers go crazy using all the
Sure.
catchphrases and trying to say that this is a. So when I get to work with a product that actually helps you become a better steward of the earth, that is so exciting to me. So I
Right.
try very hard not to use any of the catchphrases,
Yeah.
and I try to say, you know what, this is what it actually does. Do you want to use less chemical? Of course we do. Number
Right.
one, it's better for my soil and it's costs less. It's better for my bottom line. Do you want to have less drift? Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't want less spray drift?
Sure.
Who wants less labor? It's very hard to keep labor on a farm these days. Of
Right.
course you're going to want. So I, my advice to other companies when I'm talking or speaking about marketing is stop with all the catchphrases. Nobody cares. What does
Yeah.
sustainability actually mean? Right?
Yes.
Just
Right.
stop it.
Yeah.
Explain
It
what you
does.
actually mean. And
Yeah.
sometimes when people ask me or say, "Oh, well, it's sustainable," and I just say, "What does that mean?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
then I just
Absolutely.
quiet. What does it mean? Right? Does
Yeah.
it mean that you're using less chemical on your ground? Awesome. Okay, good. That's something you can market. Just saying,
Exactly. Right.
yeah. So, yeah, to me, it's exciting to be able to have an option that is better for the world and
Sure.
better, especially for each producer, because it is tough out there, with
Right.
yeah. So that that
That's a
that is what
good.
I would say.
Excellent. Well, that's right. I had many, many years ago, I had an argument with somebody about holistic oats. I was selling oats. I had oats in my lineup for horse feed and whatever feed. And she said she feeds only holistic oats. And I immediately key in on, I'm the same way. As soon as somebody says a term, I'm like,
Hmm.
I know there's vague definitions for that. And it's not regulated. The reason it's not regulated is because it's hard to name. And at that time,
Right.
organic wasn't regulated. It was wild, wild west of organic. Now it's regulated. You have to get certified, but I don't think holistic and some of the other things are actually, you can say them. And there's a lot of, in the food world, I walk through the
Mm.
grocery store and see it all the time. And my family will be like, don't bring it up. Just don't ask about free range, free roam. You just don't.
Sounds like my family.
Yeah, they
Please
don't
don't
want to
argue
go
with
into
the
the.
waitress
Yeah,
over cage-free chickens.
yeah. They're like they're going to prepare our food. Don't argue with them about what BSG is. And I always ask, do
Yeah.
you have the milk with a lot of BSG in it? Because I feel like it makes me run faster and all that stuff. But well, hey, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. We could go into, I mean, all this stuff. It's great. I love. Maybe you're one of the voices of this the focus point of the industry of who's preaching the truth about some of this stuff. I think you do have that reputation and trust with people that you're bringing truth to the market. And I appreciate that. And maybe you're the
Thank you
center of
so much.
excellence on robotics. So if people want to get a hold of you and communicate with you or have you talk with their team, their company, their trade association, what's the best way to find you in the internet world?
Yeah. So Ecorobotix.com is where you find me by day.
Yeah,
You can also find me at NorthAmericanAg.com. I'm on all social media, LinkedIn, X, Twitter, whatever, Facebook,
sure.
all of them. Chrissy Wozniak, pretty much everywhere. So I'm very easy to find. Just Google me. It'll come
Excellent.
up.
Yeah, you'll find it. If you can't find it, then technology
Yeah,
may be slipping from you. So yeah, no, it's great.
that's it.
And we'll have them in the show notes and the podcast notes. So I appreciate it. Chrissy, thank you for everything you do in your broadcasts and your business and what you're doing to help produce some food for everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.